He was the only man the Aryan Brotherhood ever let walk away, and he didn't walk to a safe yard or a PC unit or a witness stand. He walked straight into La Eme, and then he died in a blazing car crash at 26 years old, back in the same little farm town he came from. This is the full story of Martin Crazy Horse Batty Lewis Jr. To understand him, you've got to understand California's youth prisons, the Aryan Brotherhood, the Mexican Mafia, and a moment in time when those two monsters were actually working together. Martin Batty Lewis Jr. was born on March 24, 1950 in Fresno, California, and grew up in nearby Clovis. Back then, Clovis wasn't big box stores and suburbs like today. It was a dusty farm town east of Fresno. Orchards and fields, a mix of white working-class families and Mexican farm workers. Close enough to feel Fresno's pull, far enough out that it still smelled like dirt roads and fertilizer. Martin was Native American, but to most people, he looked white. In regular life, that might just be a family detail. In California's prison system, that's everything. Race decides who you eat with, who you fight with, who you can even stand next to on the yard. His blood said one thing. His appearance got him classified as something else. That becomes a big part of how both the Aryan Brotherhood and the Mexican Mafia ended up seeing him as one of theirs. He didn't grow up in Little League and Sunday school. The words that come up over and over again with him are state-raised. That means he didn't just visit juvenile hall, he grew up inside institutions. Before he ever hits adult prison, he goes through CYA, the California Youth Authority. That was supposed to be the state's rehabilitation system for young offenders. In reality, especially by the 60s and 70s, YA was junior prison. Places like Preston School of Industry in Ione, Nels and Whittier, Ventura School, and other youth facilities were sold to the public as correctional schools. The wards who did time there will tell you something different. Violent, gang-dominated, a training camp for future prison gang members. Kids as young as 14 thrown into dorms where your survival depends on how fast you pick a side and how far you're willing to go. By 1965, around 15 years old, Martin is doing time at Preston School of Industry. He even signs a photo later with PSI 65 on it, a little flex that says, "I've been in the system since I was a kid." Preston had a reputation. You did not want to go there. Beatings, racial tension, constant fights. It was a place where you learned fast. There are only two roles, predator and prey. Martin Lewis decided early which one he was going to be. Fast forward to June 21st, 1968. Martin is 18 and out on youth parole. We're back in Clovis, near the swimming pool at Pinedale Elementary School on West Spruce Avenue. A place where kids should be playing in the summer is about to become a crime scene. According to court records, Lewis and 3 partners go after a 19-year-old named Dennis Kennedy. They jump him near that pool and beat him with jack handles and tire irons. It's not a scuffle, it's a pack assault using tools as weapons. On June 24, 1968, police arrest Martin and another assailant. He's booked into Fresno County Jail, convicted of a misdemeanor and given a short stretch. On paper, it's just another violent case. Inside that jail, things are about to get much darker. Between December 27th and December 29th, 1968, a 29-year-old prisoner in Fresno County Jail lives through a nightmare. He testifies later that he was beaten, stripped naked, tied hand and foot to the sides of a cell, had fires lit under him, and was forced to perform sexual acts on other inmates. The Fresno County grand jury indicts 9 men for sex perversion charges, old school language for sexual assault. Among them is Martin Crazy Horse Lewis. He and another prisoner, Robert Raymond Wilson, are specifically indicted for acts of sodomy on the victim. To really understand what that means, you have to know the mentality back then. In that era, a lot of convicts didn't see this as being gay. In their twisted logic, this was about power. The aggressor, the one doing the violating, could still walk the main line and be considered solid. The victim was the one branded, humiliated, turned into property. To them, it was predators and prey, the pitcher and the catcher. It doesn't make it less evil. It just shows how warped the convict code was at that time. So when you hear about Crazy Horse involved in this case, it fits the pattern of who he was becoming. Not just a guy who would throw hands, someone willing to torture, humiliate, and dominate another man to prove he was a predator. In the end, the sex crime charges against him are dropped, not because nothing happened, but because the victim most likely didn't want to testify publicly in a jury trial, which was very common. Officially, the DA says there's not enough evidence. In reality, no victim means no case, but the indictment is on his record. The story circulates. His jacket in the system now includes torture and a sexual assault case, even without the conviction. Then comes the escape. On January 26, 1969, Martin Lewis and 8 other inmates pull off a jailbreak that makes headlines. They're housed on an upper floor of the Fresno County Jail. Around 7 at night, they cut through 2 metal screens and bars on a second-floor window facing M Street. The hole they cut is only about 13 inches by 15 inches, barely bigger than a sheet of notebook paper. Each one of them squeezes through that opening and climbs down a rope made of blankets, dropping directly in front of the entrance to the women's section of the jail. Inside, there are 428 inmates and only a handful of staff. No one notices until a visitor walking into the women's section sees the makeshift rope hanging down and alerts the officers. For the sheriff's department, it's a disaster. For Martin Lewis, it's another notch on the belt. Escape artist, problem inmate, headline maker. Freedom doesn't last. On January 31st, 1969, Fresno police find him at his sister's house. They're not kicking doors for a gunfight. He's hiding in a bedroom closet. He doesn't resist. He goes back into custody, but now he's not just an assault defendant. He's a GC, an escape case. On March 15th, 1969, he changes his plea to guilty on 1 count of escape. 5 days later, on March 20th, he pleads guilty to felonious assault and is sentenced to state prison. The sexual perversion case is dismissed, almost certainly because the victim refuses to testify. Fresno County is done with him. He's transferred into CDC custody, the California Department of Corrections. Now he belongs to the big leagues. When Martin Lewis hits state prison in 1969, the Aryan Brotherhood is still young, but already feared. The brand, as members call it, grows out of San Quentin in the mid-1960s. White convicts, feeling outnumbered and threatened by rising black prison movements like the Black Guerrilla Family and Latino gangs like the Mexican Mafia and the emerging Nuestra Familia, band together. They wrap themselves in shamrocks, Norse runes, and white power ideology as a way to unify white inmates from different street gangs. Underneath the ideology, the real product is violence and control, extortion, dope, murder for hire. The rule is supposed to be simple. Blood in, blood out. Shed blood to get in. The only way out is in a box. Into that world walks Martin Lewis, Native American by blood, white passing by appearance, state-raised, violent, recently involved in a torture rape indictment and a jailbreak. He is almost tailor-made for the Aryan Brotherhood. According to men who were there in that era, he is embraced and becomes one of the early members of the brand. From that point on, he isn't just Martin from Clovis, he is Crazy Horse of the Aryan Brotherhood. At the same time, another monster is growing in the system, the Mexican Mafia. La Eme starts in the late 1950s at Dual Vocational Institution, DVY, in Tracy, California. A group of Southern California Chicano gang members band together inside to protect each other and dominate the yards. Names from barrios like Hoyo Maravilla, White Fence, Florencia, and others come together under one banner. Over the years, La Eme evolves from a prison club to a prison-based cartel. They tax surgangs on the streets and behind the walls, collect rent from drug dealers, and decide who lives and who dies in the Southern California underworld. Out of Fresno, during the same general time frame as Martin, another kid is becoming important, Martin Cato Vargas. In January 1968, Cato is arrested for 4 armed robberies of Fresno area businesses. One of those robberies hits a sporting goods store. Guns are part of the loot. When police search his house, they find 2.38 caliber revolvers taken in that job hidden in his room. He gets a sentence of 5 years to life and is shipped to state prison. Cato proves himself inside. In 1970 at DV1, a respected MA founder named Richie, one of the original 1957 Mariposa guys, conducts a mass induction. He brings in 12 new recruits in a single shot. Among them is Martin Cato Vargas from Fresno. That class is nicknamed the Young Guns, the next generation of La MA soldiers. So now you have 2 Martins from the Fresno Clovis area rising through different but connected organizations. Martin Crazy Horse Lewis, an early Aryan Brotherhood soldier. Martin Cato Vargas, a Young Guns Mexican Mafia carnal. In the California prison system of the early 70s, those paths are about to cross. By around 1972, something strange is happening behind the walls. On paper, the Aryan Brotherhood and the Mexican Mafia should be mortal enemies. One is openly white supremacist, the other is a Chicano prison mob, but both of them have bigger fish to fry. The Black Guerrilla family is rising as a militant black prison organization. The Nuestra Familia is consolidating power in the north among norteños and Central Valley homeboys who are tired of being preyed on by La Eme. The AB and La Eme realize that if they cooperate, they can dominate the yards and crush these rivals. So they start working together. They share intelligence about who snitched and who's weak. They coordinate hits. If administration is expecting a Mexican Mafia stabbing and is searching all the known Eme members before yard, Aryan Brotherhood soldiers will sometimes carry the knives to the yard for them. In return, La Eme backs the AB against BGF and NF. It becomes a cold alliance built on violence and dope. Crazy Horse is right in the middle of that. He is technically white for prison politics. He is Native American by blood. His old Fresno homeboy Cato is now a made Mexican Mafia member. He is a living bridge between two gangs most people would never expect to see aligned. By April 1973, one of the men who later tells this story is back at San Quentin. That's when he hears something that even he, as a hardened convict, can barely believe. Cato Vargas is talking about sponsoring Crazy Horse into La Eme. Sponsoring, not just working with him, not just standing back to back in a riot, bringing him in as a Mexican Mafia carnal. There is one problem. Crazy Horse is already married to the brand. He's Aryan Brotherhood. Blood in, blood out. There is no such thing as a transfer from the AB to another prison gang. Normally, the idea of even asking would get you killed. But Cato is serious. Crazy Horse isn't some random white guy. He has a reputation now. State-raised, violent, willing to torture, willing to escape, already in the middle of the ABEME alliance. Cato sees him as an asset, a Central Valley hitter who can anchor MA influence outside of just Southern California. At some point in that period, Crazy Horse does what no one does. He goes to his Aryan Brotherhood brothers and asks for their blessing to leave the AB and join La Eme. That conversation alone would get most men stabbed on sight, but the politics of that moment are different. The alliance between AB and Eme is strong. Cato is respected. Crazy Horse has already proven himself loyal and dangerous. According to the men who were there, the Aryan Brotherhood leadership at San Quentin at that time includes names like Blinky Griffin, Spotsburg, Irish Murphy, and Danny Kavanagh. They consider the request. This isn't a snap decision. Eventually, they vote. In a one-time exception, the Aryan Brotherhood agrees to let Crazy Horse go. Somewhere around 1974, in San Quentin, the crossover becomes official. In a cell, on a tier, in a yard meeting, Martin Cato Vargas raises his hand and sponsors Martin Lewis into La Eme. The Mexican Mafia introduces him to the other carnales as Cavayo, spelled slang style, meaning caballo, horse. The literal Spanish for Crazy Horse would be caballo loco, but to most of them he's just horse Cavayo. From that day on, he isn't just an AB member with Eme friends, he is a full Mexican Mafia carnal. He is widely remembered as the only Aryan Brotherhood member ever allowed to walk away and patch over to La Eme, and by most accounts, only the second Native American ever made in the Mexican Mafia. A native kid from Clovis who looks white, who starts with the brand and ends up officially wearing the black hand. Now he's in the middle of something much bigger than one man. The mid-70s in San Quentin are about to explode. It's 1974. San Quentin is a concrete pressure cooker. You've got Mexican Mafia and AB on one side, Black Guerrilla family, and other black convicts on another, Nuestra Familia watching from the shadows, and an administration that thinks it can calm everything down with meetings and committees. On December 8, 1974, Eme members Black Dan Barella and Sailor Boy Gonzalez stab a black convict named Marcel Thomas. The official reason is business. An unpaid drug debt owed to the Eme in the adjustment center. Thomas survives 2 stab wounds to the back and 1 to the shoulder, but the BGF and the wider black population don't see this as just business. To them, it looks like a racial attack. Talk of retaliation starts to heat up. In response, the prison creates what it calls a climate control committee. They pick convicts with influence from each group and ask them to help cool things off. For the Mexican Chicano side, they tap Black Dan Barella and Sailor Boy Gonzalez, both active Eme members. For the whites, they pick Danny Dog Rawlinson and Animal Newton, tied into the AB car. For the black side, they choose Baby Cole and Zaribu Davis, both connected to the BGF. On paper, it looks like a peace council. In reality, it's the perfect cover for gang leaders to move messages, weapons, and dope. During all this, Cavayo is on Max B status in North Block in D section. Max B is a step-down unit for guys coming out of the adjustment center and other segregation units. They can't walk the main line and their privileges are limited, but they're allowed on a lower yard at certain times. That lower yard becomes the Mexican Mafia's war room. Cavayo sits in on meetings where they discuss a simple principle: don't wait for your enemies to hit you, hit first. Which brings us to December 19th, 1974, the day everything erupts. Christmas is right around the corner. Packages from family and friends are coming in, loaded with food, clothes, and hidden heroin. For a lot of convicts, Christmas is a brief break from the grind. For La Eme, it's the perfect distraction. They decide to move before the BGF can. Around 2:40 in the afternoon, Cavayo and other Eme members walk to the South Dining Hall at San Quentin. Inside that chow hall, they close in on two black convicts, Arthur Harris and Gary Zaribu Davis, the same Zaribu who was chosen for climate control. In the chaos that follows, Arthur Harris is stabbed to death. Zaribu is stabbed but survives. Guards later find a shank on Zaribu that he never had a chance to pull. Elsewhere in that same chow hall, another black convict, David O.C. Airy, is shot by guards because he refuses to stop trying to stab Fox Felix, a BGF inmate. The day is already bloody, and it isn't over. At about 3:05 p.m., a second wave hits the lower yard. There, Black Dan Barella personally stabs and kills a black convict named Truman Nichols. It's a coordinated series of preemptive strikes, one attack in the dining hall, another on the yard. The message to the BGF and the black population is clear. We aren't negotiating. We aren't waiting. We're moving first. Cavayo is not named in the official reports as the man with the knife in those particular hits, but he is part of that car, present in the war councils, part of the Max B MA program, representing the mob on that lower yard. In that moment, the story of Crazy Horse, the kid from Clovis, now intersects with some of the most infamous days in San Quentin history. So what does life look like for him as a Mexican Mafia carnal in that era? Even if we don't have a line-by-line breakdown of every order he gave and every hit he authorized, we know how La Eme operated. As Cavayo, with roots in Clovis and Fresno, he is perfectly positioned to extend Eme control into the Central Valley. He's the kind of guy you use to tax Sereno sets in small farm towns, to coordinate street dope lines between Los Angeles and Northern California, to act as a liaison between white convicts and Chicano convicts when a deal needs to be made or a war needs to be coordinated. He's proof that, at least for a window of time, La Eme and the Aryan Brotherhood were not just allies in theory, but tied together through real human beings. In most gang stories, the next chapter would be simple. This guy dies on a yard, in a cage, or spends the rest of his life buried in a supermax. But in 1976, a law passes in California that changes everything. Senate Bill 42, the Uniform Determinate Sentencing Act, known to a lot of convicts as the NIGA bill. Before SB 42, California sentencing was indeterminate, 5 years to life, 7 to life. The parole board had enormous power to decide how long you really did. After SB 42, sentences became determinate, fixed terms like 3, 4, or 5 years. Judges picked a base term and parole became more of a tail than the main sentence. When SB 42 kicks in, a lot of guys sentenced under the old indeterminate system suddenly become eligible to have their time recalculated under the new rules. A bunch of people who thought they were years away from a board hearing now see real dates on the horizon. Martin Cavayo Lewis is one of them. His time gets converted. Suddenly, the kid who's been in and out of YA since his teens, who did a brutal assault, got indicted for a jailhouse rape, escaped from county, became an early AB soldier, and crossed over to the Mexican Mafia during one of the most violent periods in San Quentin history, has something almost unthinkable on his calendar, a parole date. Sometime in 1976, Cavayo paroles out of San Quentin. After everything, he walks out the gate. No SU term for life, no federal supermax, no triple life sentence in the paperwork. He goes back to the place it all started, Clovis, California. If you were writing a movie, maybe you'd have the next scene be him setting up deep Eme operations in the valley, or getting snatched in a big federal RICO case. That's not what happens. On New Year's Eve, December 31st, 1976, Martin Lewis gets into a car in Clovis. The vehicle heads toward the intersection of Herndon and Peach Avenue. For reasons we don't have in detail, speed, alcohol, bad weather, bad luck, the car loses control and slams into a disposal truck. On impact, the vehicle bursts into flames. Inside that fire is the only man anyone can name who the Aryan Brotherhood let walk away and the Mexican Mafia accepted as a maid member. Martin Crazy Horse Cavayo Batty Lewis Jr. dies in that crash. He is 26 years old. On January 4th, 1977, at 2 in the afternoon, his family gathers at the Clovis Funeral Chapel for his service. Afterward, they bury him in Clovis Cemetery, just a short drive from the elementary school where he once beat a teenager with jack handles, and the streets where he first learned the difference between predators and prey. If you only heard the legend, there was a guy, a native kid, AB to Eme, still sitting somewhere in a federal cell. You might think he's still alive, and you can still find his name on lists online that treat him like a living carnal buried somewhere in a high-security unit. But the version grounded in dates, court records, locations, and the words of people who actually knew him inside says something else. Born March 24, 1950, state-raised in CYA, early Aryan Brotherhood member, only known man to leave the brand with permission and become a Mexican Mafia carnal, in the middle of the 1974 San Quentin Wars. Paroled under SB 42, dead in a car crash in Clovis on December 31, 1976, buried 4 days later, 26 years of life. That's the whole trajectory. In the end, his story isn't just about the only AB member to cross into La Eme. It's about what that crossover says. It shows how fluid and ruthless prison politics can be when it comes to business and power. It shows how race, heritage, and appearance get twisted inside the walls. A Native American kid classified as white, embraced by a white supremacist gang, and then accepted by a Mexican American prison mob. And it shows how even the most feared men in prison are still mortal. After all the stabbings, indictments, escapes, alliances, and legends, Martin Crazy Horse Lewis doesn't die by shank or by needle. He dies the way a lot of people do.